So I officially registered myself as a freelancer or self-employed entrepreneur in the Netherlands in November 2024. And in these past few months, this is what I have learned. And though the title of the video says what they don't tell you, they actually do if you ask, but you have to know a little bit more to ask for more. So consider this some kind of mini crash course to save you some time in your own process. And this is where it stays. Let me give a quick disclaimer before I begin. I'm only sharing this for entertainment purposes. I'm not a tax expert. Neither am I a business consultant of any sort. I'm a creative consultant. So take every information you hear on this video as a guide and not a legal mandate. And do not reach out to me to consult for you on how to do this. If you do it, chances are I may ignore the message, and that's not very nice. So yeah, let's get into it. I was a freelancer in Ghana before moving here. And by freelancing, I mean I'm a documentary filmmaker, voiceover artist, a creative consultant. And in this video, I'm going to cover these particular topics: the registration, the taxes, payment and exchange rates, and maybe a few challenges you might come across. The first one is the registration. The difference between freelancing as I know it in my part of the world, which is Ghana, versus here is the structure, which starts with registration. In Ghana, I was a literal freelancer. I didn't register. And this is the first thing that you should know or do. You have to register yourself and your business with the registration bureau that is called the KVK, the Kamer van Koophandel. It is mandatory. Luckily for me, I know a few people who are freelancers and even better, also in the creative space. So I could ask what to do and expect. And frankly, the registration, according to them, is really straightforward. You find the KVK office in your city and you apply. However, the process starts online. You have to fill an online form and book an online appointment before going to the office to finalize the process. While filling the form, you have to define every activity that you perform as a freelancer, and you have to try to be as broad as possible. If you're a freelancer like me who does multiple things, for example, video production, voiceover, scripting, social media management, just avoid limiting yourself. You can add broad categories. And there are some things that you should note before you decide to register. You will need a residential address to register, a permanent residential address, or maybe if you have an office that you've rented. You cannot use a PO box, which means that it's not very handy if you move frequently. And it cost me 80 euros for that one-time registration. When I went to the office, the administrator who saw to the finalization of the registration was very nice and helpful, and actually told me that I could even file for taxes for that one-time payment I made, since it counts as a business expense. Now, speaking of taxes, the almighty dreaded conversation for most people, including me. I'm just going to try my best to explain or paint the simplest picture possible that I have of it, because there's so much you can, or you're allowed to find out for yourself, or exactly what it's required of you. If you need clarification, you can call the tax office. You are allowed to do that. Now, the first thing is you are responsible for your own taxes. However, there are two main ones that you should know about. The first is the quarterly, which is the VAT returns, the BTV, and the annual is the second one, which is the income belasting. Now, the VAT or the BTV is a standard 21% on most services. Most. Whatever you charge for a service, please add that to your invoice. Now, there are different taxes for different products, but for the sake of what I do, which is offering services, the standard is 21%. And that's what I come across in my transactions. You are supposed to do your own VAT 4 times a year, every quarter that is. And don't worry about it, you'll be told the exact dates and the deadlines for that, which means that you have to save that 21% on every invoice to give the tax authorities, depending on how many gigs you get in that quarter. Failure to do so will attract fines. The other thing you should note is that you should track all your business related expenses and keep invoices and receipts for them to make it easier to claim tax or tax waivers with relation to the work you do. So track everything. All the tax forms and portals are in Dutch. With my experience doing quarterly BTV, I use Google Chrome and I translate the page and it makes it easier. It doesn't always work though, and it may not always be exact. However, it gets you a step closer than trying to make sense of the language if you don't understand it. And it goes beyond language. This is law and the interpretation might be different. I haven't had any issues with filing my VAT anyway, so all good there. The other major tax to be aware of is the income belasting, which is the annual overall percentage to be deducted. So after adding the 21% to your invoice, you have to also be aware of putting aside maybe 35 to 40% of your earnings for income belasting at the end of the year. As a freelancer, you're entitled to some tax returns or waivers. However, not saving or putting aside those amounts will land you in some deep waters by the end of the year. You just have to save and be ready for it. The best thing you can do if you are having a consistent income stream is to hire a tax accountant to manage these for you so that you can just relieve yourself of the headache of, filing and figuring this out on your own. As a voiceover artist and documentary filmmaker, I fall in the brackets of the kind of freelancer who is going to experience working outside the confines of the Netherlands. And in actual fact, a large percentage of my income is made abroad. If you are in a similar boat, just be aware that you must learn about what it means for your business and prepare accordingly. For example, you must clearly indicate the VAT treatment on all invoices where it applies. Like I mentioned in the previous point, if it gets too confusing, hire help. Another thing that affects me is the currency exchange and exchange rates. It's not always going to be in your favor when you're earning, for example, dollars and receiving euros or the euro equivalent with your annual income in mind. So it's something you also have to be mindful of, because sometimes you receive dollars and then you change it and it's not, then it's less. And depending on the bank you save with or work with, you can explore how all these transactions and expenses for your business can be tracked, making it easier for you during the tax account period. The other thing is you may have to consider insurance once you start earning. Insurance is mandatory for everyone here in the Netherlands anyway, so you have to make room for that, for your monthly insurance contribution. And as a freelancer, you may also want to consider liability insurance in the case of an emergency and you're unable to perform your working duties. It's very important, or it will come in clutch for you. Now let's talk about working with Dutch clients. My experience so far has been quite good, perhaps because I have been a little more aware of the Dutch directness, so it was expected when I was dealing with clients. Communicate clearly and precisely about every step of the project. Communicate any changes promptly and expect such clear-cut, often no fluff kind of communication from your clients too. Dutch clients get straight to work and expect results. It's just how it is. And with payments, I haven't had any issue with chasing after my money at all. If I compare this to my experience working as a freelancer in Ghana, I am not exaggerating when I say it's night and day. Now, once you make your payment terms clear to a Dutch client and agree before you start the project, you can trust that they will pay. Perhaps someone in the future might prove this experience wrong, but so far, I've loved every bit of working with Dutch clients. I'll quickly touch on the language barrier bit and how I have handled it so far. So generally, most Dutch people can speak really good English. However, in my experience as a documentary filmmaker, for example, clients are much more comfortable speaking Dutch if it's an interview that you are conducting. My hack has been, my partner, who's been really supportive with the filmmaking process. When she's available, she's going to help me with it. In the case where my partner has not been available, for example, during the edit, I use a series of tricks like, transcribing the audio and then translating it into Dutch. However, this isn't always contextually correct. So based on the work done by these AI websites, I try to understand the import of the message and then I change the grammar or I fix the grammar to make it sound real or human. General communication with Dutch clients on sets or in person has never been a problem. I'm yet to run into a Dutch client who couldn't express themselves decently in English. And another thing to remember is for every space, you have to rebuild your local network slowly. And in my current space, it could be slower than you think. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just keep putting yourself out there and generating your own leads and ideas where there is none. And lastly, do not undercharge due to the fear of being new. If you're offering value that is standard anywhere in the world, then stick to your rates. Or even if you want to give discounts, don't do it because of that. The workload is not going to change because you charge less. So let's do a quick recap. Before that, if you have any experiences to share to make this whole experience better, you can do that in the comments. The first things first, you register at the KVK in your city, start tracking all your activities, especially your spending. Handle your VAT. If it's too complex, hire help, and be aware of your currency rates if you are working with international clients. That's about it. That's my experience with freelancing in the Netherlands. I'll catch you in the next video.